All right, what's up, YouTube? I'm gonna go ahead and do a tier list here over the Rota release. So these are all gonna be based off of post Rota. A couple decks that we're not gonna be sure about, but we're gonna try to give you guys the best information we can. I'm gonna be joined here by Calm. We're gonna go ahead and give you a tier list here.
What's up, guys?
All right, starting off. Let's start with salads. Thoughts on salads?
Um, Salad's been the same for a while. They didn't get any upgrades from Rota, so I mean, you can play Rogue or
Yeah, I think
Rogue.
salad's gonna have the same issue it's always had. It just does the same thing. It just makes a couple
Yeah,
blink
same thing.
monsters and hopefully will, I guess,
The
play
only
through.
disruption they really have is like just Promethean Engrave and then the trap card. If they play both traps, then maybe three disruptions.
Yeah, that doesn't cut it nowadays at
Yeah,
all, even close. So yeah, I think with a good pilot though, you got people that have been playing salads for like
or like years. Yeah,
ever. So
yeah,
like
yeah.
they'll find the ways to make it better, but it's not gonna
And I
compete.
can hear that they died in Nib still to this day. So
Yeah, they don't
like
have a way to
it is.
stop. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
they
kind
can
of
play
agree.
through though, but yeah.
Fiendsmith Rescue Ace.
Rescue has always been a solid pick. Now, hmm, they they always been solid. So I mean, I would just put it tier one in the back though, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, they kind of do the same thing. I mean, the Turbulent Set 4 is always going to be
Yeah, it's
good,
always been pretty good. Yeah,
especially because it's, they active. If you're going to stop it, you're going to affect Veil it on summon or Impermanent on
of course.
summon. They can
Or
get rid of
imperm, or
it.
sometimes they'll have the little knight though, just to chain to
Right,
dodge it too. So.
right. So there's so many different ways to resolve your Set 4. And then on top of that, you
Mhm.
got the Fiendsmith package. So you're going to have the
Mhm.
Caesar, the Desiree, plus 4
Yep.
back row. Um, and then they just play on your turn. So turn 1
And
is
they
their
have good
turn.
and good recovery.
Yeah, I mean grind game wise, the grind as
Yeah,
long as
grind
they
game.
get
Yeah.
the field spell, the grind game's crazy.
Mhm.
I'd have to also agree. I'd say tier one, but definitely on the lower end of
Yeah,
tier
lower
one,
end. Yep.
especially with the new support. Branded, I'll start on this one. My honest opinion um, with branded fusion being at one with a good pilot, you get a really good branded player. Um, it doesn't matter that it's at one at all. But you get a mediocre branded player, and it's going to come up as an issue. Plus, the gimmick lock is still live. The Albion Sanctifier is still here. Uh, Grass is greener is a way to play the deck. So you're dumping 30 cards into your graveyard. I think with a good pilot, you're still tier one, but I think with your average player, it's a tier two rogue deck because only having one branded fusion that gets ashed. What do you do if you don't know how to
I agree.
pilot the deck?
Yeah, if you don't have any way to extend your thrust or your fusion dupes or like other ways instead of just branded fusion turbo, the deck could get a little complicated. But the branded pilots are really good, like you said. They know how to sanctify lock as many times as possible through like Ash and maybe some imperm or somewhat. But
They know how to,
yeah, I
yeah.
can say top rogue or really like bottom tier
I
one.
think I
So
gotta comfortably say bottom tier one behind Fiendsmith
yeah,
Rescue Ace. I don't think we can
that
put
works.
in Rogue because you're still gonna see this deck in tops. Like there's gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah,
three
you're
or
gonna see.
four in
Yeah,
the top cut that are gonna be playing branded.
yeah.
It
Someone who
happens
knows
every
how to play
single.
branded definitely will be up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens every event.
Hmm.
Vanquish Soul, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here. I think it's just a rogue deck. It
I
does some
agree. Yeah.
pretty cool things. It can dodge just about anything. So it's
Mhm.
Veiler, Imperms, it dodges them consistently. Um, but it takes a good pilot because the deck can be complicated. It's not
I agree. Yeah.
necessarily a linear deck. It's situational. When do you activate your hand effects? When do you bounce it back? When do you summon this?
Hmm.
So I would say low end rogue, but I think I would we'll
I
deal
will
with
I
that
will put
later.
higher I will put higher than Salamangre
Yeah, so would
just
I.
because it can dodge a couple stuff and also they play Cash Terra engine in it as well.
True,
So
true. But
I
does it
mean
lose to Nib?
that's a good question. I think hmm
I think they're
I think
always
they
under five. I'm pretty
yeah I was
sure
gonna
they're
say they're
always
always
under
under. I'd
five.
say four max, right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
never five. If they're
But you also
five,
we
then
got
they're
to
playing
take into
another engine.
consideration one main card. And I should have said this at the beginning. Can the deck play through Maul Charming? That's really gonna is what it's gonna come down to when we're talking
I,
high
I
end
would
events.
say play through.
Because it struggles through
They
both Maul
they
Charmings.
they yeah. I was gonna say the Fuwaro's the new one would be. It was only. I think they only draw three or two from this deck.
But I
From
think
from the
the
other
new
one, the
yes,
other
that's the
one would be.
problem. That's a problem.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
would. That's why I think it's Rogue because you're gonna see people playing six copies
The
of
Mulch armies,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
for
they're
sure.
probably gonna resolve it. Um, yeah. So
I
I
think
again
max,
Rogue
well, they like maybe three, four draws from Vanquish, so which is
a lot.
good. But I mean, most other decks like full combo, like
Yeah.
you're drawing your deck.
Yeah.
So
15 cards. Pearly situational again. I think it's a pilot thing. I think there's
you know,
really good Pearly players, and I think there's mediocre.
there. I agree, but I was gonna say with the Mulch armies we were talking about just recently, I think they'll only get like three, four draws though.
Yeah, I would say if you're
So
not
like,
including your
it's
normal
good.
summon on it,
Yeah,
and then you got your special summon of the other name, if you even do that, but even if you just normal summon, go
yeah,
into you could do
yeah.
it
Black
under
Cat.
two.
Yeah, I was gonna say you go Black Cat into bigger, the bigger Black Cat, and then on the opponent's turn Noir, which is only two draws, which is pretty good disruption, but I don't know if it's enough to like beat someone with a seven card or eight card hand. I guess you can say, yeah.
No,
So
no, but they're
yeah,
they're banking on the unaffected beat stick, that stay on
yeah,
field,
yeah, really they are,
and
yeah,
hopefully
yeah.
they can't out it, and then they get to play after that. With I mean they play a lot of hand traps in the deck. Plus
Oh,
you
they
can play
do.
the Kashtira cards. Yeah,
Yep,
it's
yep,
not a really big engine outside the spell cards, right? You
yeah.
got three, two, and then the spell cards, and then other than that,
Hmm.
it's not engine.
It's whatever you want, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean they can play a lot. I would still say high end rogue.
I
Um,
agree. I would
I
say it's better than Vanquisher.
yeah, I would say. I mean, it really depends on the pilot. Unchained Fiendsmith, I think this deck is one of the lower tier Fiendsmith decks outside of like Fiendsmith Musketeers.
Hmm.
Um, Simply because, for one, Mulch Armies kills this deck. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely
That's
kills it.
yeah, it kills it.
So they
Puaros
can't.
kills this
Yeah,
deck,
it
yeah.
kills both versions of it, the Unchained portion of it and the Fiendsmith engine of it. So like this deck, if this gets Mulch Army resolved on it,
Yeah.
they can't make a half board really. What do they do? Go to Abyss and then
Yeah.
Rage.
I would
And then
actually put this
pass.
lower, maybe lower than, maybe between Vanquisher and Salad.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna do
Or,
much.
or to be, yeah, I guess it'd be
But
better,
again,
yeah.
there are the good pilots of the Unchained. I mean, there were people that were making Unchained good before the Fiendsmith that were
Yeah, yeah.
topping with it. But again, I think compared to your other Fiendsmith counterparts, it just
It's
doesn't
just
do enough.
Puaros against this Unchained engine is just, it's crazy. Like, they summon it from deck every time, so,
It's gonna be a problem for sure.
yeah, it'll
Fiendsmith
be a huge
Musketeers,
problem.
man. Honestly, I think we'll go home. Lacrima hit
Mm,
was brutal, man. As a guy,
yeah,
as a person who picked up the deck,
yeah.
um, when we lost Lacrima, it kills it. It just there's nothing Fiendsmith Musketeers does better than any other Fiendsmith variant anymore.
Mm.
You might as well
It's
play
more
a
of a
different
second
variant.
deck, but yeah, I got
Like
you.
Lincoln to the Brains, which is cool. You might special some cards, but what are you gonna go into? Like,
Yeah,
Hero, interesting place because of Dark Law. Banishing cards is still real good.
yeah.
Um, and again, big problem though. Gets manhandled by Malcharmy.
Hmm.
Also loses to Joel
Yep, and also loses the nib, so,
and Nib. So I think
yeah,
we put this back home
yeah,
where it
yeah,
belongs, man. I
yeah, I
don't think you
agree,
should
yeah.
be taking that. I mean, locals is cool, but regionals and higher, you're not gonna like it. Um, let's do Centurion here. This is in an interesting place because there's a lot of mixed reviews on it. Some people say the deck is now crazy. Some people say it's go home. Um,
Hmm.
Now the on your first turn, you can end on Auxilia, Quasar, and Legatia on your first turn, all three. With the new Synchro monster in the graveyard that can resummon itself if you lose if the card's destroyed by card effect or battle. So I
I don't think
personally
it's
think
bad, yeah. I don't think it's bad.
it's great, but the problem you run into now is you lose to Nib.
I was gonna say, I was just about to ask you, like, how many summons is it until you
So
get Quasar?
one, two, three. Oh yeah, no, you lose to Nib.
Oh, you lose to it?
100%.
Oh man.
Because no matter what, you're doing at least two
'Cause I think Crimson's five, right? Basically.
synchro into Auxilia, and then you got to get two more on the field for Crimson.
Yeah.
Like
Oh
you
yeah.
lose to
Then
Nib
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
But the deck
I
can play
got you.
through Nib with the right hand.
Yeah.
If you're worried about Nib, you hold enough, they nib you, and they nib you at the wrong time. They should just be nibbing on end of main.
Yeah.
But you got
Yep.
to do it before the Quasar hits, I guess. So it's a timing thing. But if they do it too early, they can still play. Put them in the back row and play on your opponent's turn. Um,
But it's really
I
good against Droll though, so I like the deck.
I
So
think this is probably my opinion is this will be one of the
the
highest
highest
rogue
rogue deck,
decks.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
I
Yeah.
would say you can't put it tier one. I don't think it's going to do enough to do that. But I would definitely say this is going to be one of the highest rogue decks for sure. You will see this deck will be played. You'll find the right pilots, but I thoroughly enjoy the deck. It avoids hand tracks well because it places.
That's yeah, really good.
Um, Valmonica, it's funny enough, at the regionals I went to, there was a guy who he got like 14th or 15th. He
Hmm.
went X2 with Valmonica.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
not really sure why. I think this
I'm
deck.
not really sure why.
I've
Okay.
played against
I
it.
was gonna say maybe the testing would be
Yeah, I mean I've played against it. It does some cool things, but any deck that's main combo ends on Baguska,
yeah, it's
doesn't
kind of weird.
really
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
for me. I think maybe we'll see it though. Who knows? I guess right. Who knows? I guess. Um, Voiceless Voice.
Now I was told from a lot of people this deck has a lot of potential
I
because
agree.
it does lose to draw, and like you said, if you have the right hand, it doesn't. But also, it doesn't lose to the new Fuwaros because they don't even summon from the deck or the extra deck. Well, I guess they
Correct.
do summon from the deck if you use the spell in the grave, but there's not a lot of draws coming from that Fuwaros.
They might
And from
get
the old
one.
and from the old March Army, I guess there is probably two draws, maybe three max. But this deck
Yeah.
is not bad. It isn't terrible. It did not get any support, I think, but
No,
it is
it didn't.
it's quite a solid deck. But I don't
Biggest
know how much
problem
disruption it can do though.
loses the D shifter. It
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
loses. I resolved D shifter twice against this deck, and they just sent
yeah.
one pass.
They don't do anything. I agree. Yeah.
That's the problem, but I still think it's a good deck. I think it's still a tier one deck. It doesn't use the extra deck really. It doesn't lose the D barrier.
Hmm.
Um, well, I
Well, I
guess it
guess you
does.
could
It
call
does lose
ritual
the
if
D
you wanted to.
barrier because it
Yeah.
calls ritual.
Yeah.
It has a giant beat stick, Tenpai killer. Because of the 4100 attack, they have very limited ways to get rid of it because they can't target
Hmm.
it and they can't battle over it. On
Yeah.
top of that, and it's a very consistent deck. Um,
Very
it's
consistent.
very
And I know
consistent.
like it don't lose a D berry, but you could like actually ritual someone on the opponent's turn with a blessing. I think so.
Right, and then it can't be destroyed by battle.
Yep. So it's like
So
it's
again,
very
voices is good.
versatile.
Yeah, I saw a
Voices
lot
are
of
very.
representation at the locals, at the regionals I went to. There's a lot of voices players, especially because it's super affordable now. It's not even that expensive,
Mm,
like it was on release. Sky Striker, I think we can just put it here. I mean, let's just be honest. There's way better
yeah,
going second
yeah,
decks.
I agree.
But there is always that one person who somehow makes it viable. That always places decent with Sky Striker.
Probably playing it with like seven other engines, but yeah.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Fair enough. Sky Striker Tenpai. Um, let's do Tenpai Dragon while we're here. I still think this is going to be considered a top deck. Um,
Yeah, it's quite stupid.
right now, later on, I think when we get some other decks like Raziel and stuff like that, it will fall off a little bit. But given the ban list we have, you don't have to have Sangan summoning. I didn't have it resolve at all. Um, and the deck just kills through whatever. It, I still think. I mean, we don't even need to talk about it. I mean, everyone knows what Tenpai is. I still think Tenpai is a top represented deck for sure. Um, Ritual Beast, interesting place.
Oh,
It's done really
I
well
mean,
this
man,
year. It's done
Shifter's a
really
crazy
well.
card. Uh, it does lose the draw, but if they do Shifter you, then the draw doesn't matter. They do lose to Nib, and with the new Molcharmy, they get. I guess yeah, they lose to Molcharmy because they counter hawk at least minimum two times.
Oh,
So
for
like
sure.
that's a draw two there. I mean, and they link summon and all that. So like I think a minimum like
And it's specials from deck.
yeah, it does
Um,
special from the
I think
and
the
with
Maul
E-Tail.
Charmy is going to bring it down a little bit from top deck to tier one. I still think the idea that it loves D Shifter um,
Is a crazy,
is
yeah.
still
It's a crazy
super
card.
crazy,
Yeah.
even through the Maul
Mm.
Charmy, because in certain aspects, right, if you think about it, Ritual Beast goes first, they Maul Charmy, they chain D Shifter or whatever,
Yeah.
however, D Shifter then chain Maul Charmy. They play one or two cards. Opponent draws one card. If the opponent's deck can't play through D Shifter,
Yeah, they could actually just straight up lose. Yeah,
then it just
yeah.
doesn't matter. And then we go back, and then they just play their turn like nothing
But
happened.
then again, if they're Senpai, then they might just
Right,
kill you. So
right. So I mean, I still think the deck has a place because it loves D Shifter, um, and obviously it's topped like crazy over the last couple months. It's won multiple regionals. I guess we'll have to see with the Malcharmy stuff what happens. Melodious, I mean Rogue, right? I mean it's not great, it's not terrible, it's not expensive now. First movement solo isn't it's not super expensive. Um,
it's like branded light.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
yeah, like Bud Light. You got Bud Light branded, and you got
That's fair.
Melodious Bud Light.
Yeah,
Like
it's
Light
mediocre.
Light.
It's a cheap deck if you want to play it and go.
Yeah,
It doesn't cost a lot.
they play a lot of the fairy cards like Hero with them too. So
Yeah,
green light,
Hero
purple
plus
light. Yep.
the Diva, or is it Diva?
Yep. Is it Diva?
Eva. Um,
Eva. Yeah, yeah, Eva. Yeah, they have a
being
new card coming
unbanned.
after
Now
Madness.
they have
Yep. Hmm.
hand negate. So yeah, I think it will do okay, but it's not a contender. Infernoid, we can obviously say go home,
Yeah.
won't show up.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
point.
the only reason you play is to play with the Snake Eyes card. So
Yeah, you're not gonna play that. Fiendsmith Memento, big fan of the deck. Big fan of the deck. Um,
very versatile. It can lose to draw
it can lose to draw.
somewhat, somewhat, because it sends a lot to the graveyard. So
The Fiendsmith portion of the deck prevents it from losing to Nib. Um,
yeah, but then that loses to draw though.
but
You know what I
that
mean?
loses to draw, and it does not like D Shifter at all.
Mm.
But I mean, this deck, I mean, we're talking as if you have the out, but if you don't have the out, this deck is crazy.
I agree. Yeah, it's pretty
It
good.
still has an in archetype Appaloosa,
Hmm.
um, and a 5,000 beat
Somewhat, but
stick.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I
pretty good.
I think this is a top tier one deck. I mean, this deck does a lot. It builds a
My
crazy
opinion,
board.
I would put it lower than Ritual Beast though.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. This deck can play through a lot of hand traps.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I've had problems against that
a
deck.
ton.
Yeah,
Big. I think this deck, especially with the new card, allowing you to recycle from the banished,
that's
which
pretty
was
good
an
too.
issue
Yeah,
we weren't able
and
to
can
do.
now attack directly too now.
And
So
yep, now your big guy can attack directly. So, um, I think we're gonna see a lot from this deck for sure. Plus, you gotta remember, I also get the new Fiendsmith card, the new Lacrima, the
oh,
Crimson Tears.
yeah, that does help. Yeah,
So it's almost like they can almost guarantee Desiree on their end board on top of everything. So now like Harpies and Lightning Storm and stuff like that aren't guaranteed losses if they have Desiree on the field. Um, we'll do Fiend Link Ubel. Obviously, still a top deck. I mean, Ubel is still
crazy deck,
very
man.
good. The makes the God board. Desiree, Caesar, Rage, Phantom, and Vardis, um, which is a crazy board with like 9 forms of interruption.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Um,
kind
and
of
it can
crazy.
play
Yeah.
through. It doesn't lose the D shifter. Um,
Hmm.
it can sometimes struggle with draw, but I don't. It doesn't even lose the draw. A single hand trap ain't stopping this deck. You can't just ash a single card or imperm a single
I mean,
card.
they would have a bunch of non-engine in their hand if they do lose to one hand trap. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
so
Then they just had a bad
no
hand.
clap back at you. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But
Like this deck is still crazy.
crazy.
White Forest and Tyrion. With the new Centurion support, mixing it with White Forest, I could see this deck being real good. The problem is, it's just a pure synchro deck. Um, White Forest to me isn't really sold. I think it's a decent engine and it does some pretty cool things with the sending spells for cost that reset themselves and all that. But I mean, I would say it's a decent rogue deck. I mean, I would say a mixture between, I mean, whichever one you want to say is better, I guess, between Centurion and White
I think
Forest.
Centurion Pure is really good. White Forest. I'm not set on the White Forest cards, even though they did get a new card.
Well, White Forest
It's
loses the goal.
White Forest is just in general like its M board to me. It usually isn't anything. It
It's a
really is
book.
usually isn't any. It's usually the non-engine cards that do a lot.
Yeah. It's a book of Eclipse,
Yeah,
really.
that's what I was gonna say. A Book of Eclipse, but like you can prevent that from happening though.
But
You know?
they can main deck, I mean, as you know, they can main deck
Yeah, skill drain. Yeah. So
floodgates,
like,
and then
yeah,
send them
that's what I'm
all
saying. The
into.
non-engine cards are what are the big thing. And the Book of Eclipse, yeah, it's a really good card, but you can swap the Book of Eclipse.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, but I think it has a nice consistency. Has a lot of power if you can't stop it. It can build a crazy board. Can definitely kill you in one turn, no problem. With some big bodies from Centurion and big bodies from White Forest. But
Hmm.
again, I don't think we'll see too much there. White Forest Runic again.
Yeah, the running cards are carrying a lot there for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. I mean, the issue with the deck that I see is if they can't continue to draw off a Runic
Oh
Fountain.
yeah, one drool. Whew,
Yeah, right.
they they
Droll
they
them,
they
they
dislike you.
crumble.
Yeah.
D
Yeah.
shifter, they don't like D shifter at
Oh yeah, D
all,
shifter too.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they summon a lot from hand. They summon a lot from the extra deck.
Hmm.
Both Mulch armies do very well against this. Considering, I mean, at minimum, they want their end board. They're summoning 3 or 4 times from the extra deck, minimum.
Yep.
Plus from their hand, you're summoning 2 or 3 times there as well. So either one, your opponent's drawing 3, 4 cards minimum, which most likely they'll be able to break your board. So that's going to be a big issue. This would be White Forest Toy Box as a Mina, is what I would say. I think this deck has a lot of potential, um, mainly because the Azamina, like
Yeah, the Omni negate off the
the
rip is
Omni
pretty
negate
good.
off the rip to prevent
Yeah.
like the
It's like what you
drolls
bell in a
and
way.
stuff,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
can, if you hard open the hollowed and don't have to use deception to add, they don't lose to droll. Obviously, if they have to
Oh,
use the
so
deception to add.
so I'm seeing how like what so the continuous build, like how does the combo work just to get to the Omni negate? Can you
Yeah,
explain?
so you use deception add hollowed of Azamina.
Okay, so
Azamina
you
effect.
could lose a draw.
Yes, if you don't hard open the hollowed.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Um, because then that's your one ad. Now, if you hard open the hollowed and you just got to have another simple spoil card in your hand, then you do not lose the draw because now you can make the Omni negate. You won't lose the
Yeah.
Niv, you won't lose the draw,
Yeah.
etc. So I think the deck has a lot more protection now with the Azamina stuff, and it has a lot of firepower now that they're playing Diabell Star, they're playing Wanted,
Hmm.
Seeker, they're playing. So I mean, they're gonna have a lot more gas, and they are actually gonna use a lot more of the Azamina cards than what you'll see. I think they used 3 of them. I think they even used the common that was printed. Um,
Mm.
so I believe it's a targeted send and doesn't even destroy. Um, so I think this deck. I mean, it's hard to tell. It's either tier one or testing, but I mean, I think we can assume that it has Azamina in it. It's gonna be pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, Millennium just doesn't have enough, right? Like
Millennium's literally the same. They just get a new card that can add the Ankh. So,
right. Like I just
so
it doesn't do enough. It has one wipe your board and then a spell trap negate. Um,
hmm.
I mean I think it's better as an engine than it is a deck. Like adding the Millennium cards into White Force and stuff. Um, as a full deck, you don't take it. Just go home. Fire King, pure Fire King. Mm,
Pure, like we gotta play with something. There's no way.
pure Fire King.
Pure
Um,
everything. This is just destroy that deck. Destroy as much as we can.
yeah, I mean, we could probably safely assume this would just be Snake Eye Fire King,
Yeah, Snake
without
Eye.
the
That sounds right.
Azamina, without the
Yeah,
Fiend Smith. I still think the deck's good. I think
I
it's a
think
low
so
tier
too.
one.
I agree.
The Kieran's a crazy card, non-target pop, can play through a lot. The problem again though is it struggles with Mulch armies, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
Heavily. So but again, I still think the deck's super strong, especially with the new Fire King card that we've been waiting on for about a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. The wing beast.
That's
Yep.
released.
Hmm.
So I guess
Yep.
we'll have to. Honestly, I really think this is a. I don't know how much that card's gonna make a big difference. Um,
I could not tell you, but in Master Duel, they play it. It only basically destroys one to add another one from like it destroys one in hand or field to add another one from deck,
yeah,
and then when it's destroyed, it summons the OG Fire King from
yeah,
the
the
deck.
Eternity
But
one. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, the
but
bigger one, the
it
one that
some
keeps coming
I've
back.
had sometimes like that card. Yeah, it'll come back during the standby and destroy everything, but it's mandatory.
Hmm.
So like I've had times where they have destroyed the field and it actually wipes their stuff. And yeah,
Yeah,
wiping their stuff is good, but sometimes it isn't. Like sometimes you really don't want to do that. So
yeah. You don't want to destroy your Snake Eye portion of the deck.
yeah, yeah. Like why
Um,
would you do that? Yeah.
yeah. Again, I think I'm cool with leaving it in testing, just because who knows. I mean,
There might
Honestly,
be something that might come up, but like for Master Duel wise, what I've seen, it's okay. It's okay.
yeah, we'll put it bottom tier one. I mean, it still plays the Snake Eyes engine, still plays the Fire King engine, which is good. Nothing much has really changed outside of the Malcharmies for them.
Pretty much.
Gimmick
Yeah.
Puppet, I mean, really? Like,
It still does what it does.
I
It
think it's
just
still
you have to
Rogue.
hard. You still have to hard draw the field spell though. That to get everything you want, you have to hard draw
I
it.
think
Or like
any, I think any deck
terraform
that first turn kills,
rotation.
right? Like naturally, it has a decent place, right? If it first turn
But
kills,
it only could burn. Like that's this game plan. If you can prevent them from burning somehow, like you're good.
yeah, I would say probably low Rogue. I mean, you're gonna see people playing it for sure.
Hmm.
I think it'll do decent. Fiendsmith Chimera, I still think is a crazy deck. Still a
Yeah.
tier one deck. It plays through a crap ton. It does a lot. The end board is crazy.
Yeah. I can't
Um,
believe that they actually made a Dusted the Gold a card to go into the Fiendsmith engine and
right.
stuff like that. That's
Yep,
crazy.
and that links you right in. Yeah, bridges. That
Yeah.
deck bridges probably better than any
Yeah.
deck does for Fiendsmith. It
Yeah.
bridges perfectly into both engines.
It is
Uh,
so easy to bridge. Yeah.
Especially with Aerial Eater on top of that. Aerial Eater sent
Hmm.
Necrom special
Yep.
adjusted. There's your Fiendsmith. If you needed to,
Crazy.
and then of course Diabells. People forget about Diabells.
Oh
That
yeah,
card's crazy.
Diabelle.
That
Yeah.
kills
Yeah.
Tenpai. That butchers
Yeah.
Tenpai. Um,
Yeah.
to a certain extent. Again, though, problem this deck's gonna have is the Malcharmies. Especially the new one from the extra because they summon a
Oh
lot
yeah.
from
Yeah.
the extra
They
deck.
summon a lot from the extra deck. Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a problem. But again, I still think Fiendsmith Chimera is a very, very strong deck. Um, Labyrinth, low key.
It kind of loses to not to the new Marshari, but the old one. But it doesn't summon that much.
So people are playing now. The version that I showed you, that's a lot of the
They're playing
version people are
that.
playing. That's a lot
Oh
of
my
versions
God! I don't want to play Labyrinth. Jesus
because it doesn't
Christ.
summon a lot. So Malcharmies are non-existent. You can go ahead and D shifter. It doesn't matter. They're just gonna set five and pass, and then they're gonna set the five that are gonna make your life miserable. Um, and then the only fear is losing the Ash. It can main deck Lava Golem, main deck Wind Spear mode, like kind of like what Joshua
Jeez.
Schmidt did. Main deck Spear mode. It takes care of the whole Ubel board
Yeah.
by itself. Then you just play a bunch of control cards that stops your opponent from playing, and then you slowly just wither them down. Because Daruma Cannon is a crazy card, and
I
they can
agree.
search it. So,
Yeah.
and they can search any card they need basically at any time. They can search their D barrier, they can search their Daruma Cannon, whatever they need, they can search. Um, Labyrinth to me is still a tier one deck. It does a lot. Mimigul, I think we have to put in testing, right? Um,
It has a lot of potential, so testing is not a bad spot to put it.
Cause like this, I played it a few times. The deck has upgraded significantly. I mean, you do so much more now, with giving your opponents monsters that are annoying,
Yeah, like actually
controlling the
giving them the
D.
monster and them having to flip it is actually a huge deal if you have charm. So it's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
quite good.
and it
It
has
is
a
it's
built-in
a
floodgate. Cause
I want to say
technically
it's a
that's
sleeper deck, but I want to say no one should sleep on this deck, you know. So
yeah,
and it's a floodgate, like you said, like
has
it's
built-in
pretty good.
floodgate, a
Yeah,
one-sided floodgate really,
yeah,
and it main decks Tikaboo on top of
yeah.
that. It
And you can
has
play shifter if you wanted to.
yeah,
So
and it
like it's
main deck
like
shifter,
yeah,
and it can play around the Malcharmies if you
yeah,
need
and it
to.
plays around the Bistials. You don't have to worry about Bistials ever. Like
Yeah,
it's solid. It's solid. I can't say anything much about it.
it's gonna be a
If
good.
someone
I
if
think
someone
it's gonna
takes
be
their
good.
time and actually thinks about like how they should build this deck, it should be up in the top tables for
Yeah,
sure.
no, this deck's gonna be. I'm excited for it. Sprite Frog, I think, is still decent.
Yeah, it's
It's
always been a rogue deck.
it's not
Everybody
overwhelming.
likes it. It's like almost like a fan favorite rogue deck almost.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk too much, but I do know that it doesn't really like Droll, of
Oh yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
And I still think unfortunately the runic portion of
The March
Sprite is
armies
better.
hurt them a lot, especially
Oh, for
the
sure.
old one. They summon blue from hand. They summon jet from hand, red from hand. Like oh man,
Yeah, a lot of summoning from hand. But
yeah.
again, there's another deck that can play Toad, and Toad's obviously a
Oh
crazy
yeah,
card.
Toad's a crazy card. Yeah.
We'll go Battle Wasp. Testing, again, I
I
have
this
played
is
against it.
that's like where if you take your time and actually know how to play the deck, it could
Yeah.
be very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the banishing and non-target destroy, basically an unlimited amount of your opponent's cards, and it plays through a lot. But again, this deck would get decimated by the new Mulch Army. I mean,
Yep.
this probably summons 7 times from the extra deck.
I was gonna say, yeah, more charms are crazy,
Um,
yeah. And I don't know, like since they have that new basically whirlwind or battle boss
yeah,
wind, they add a lot. So I mean, Drool
and
sounds like it
Droll
hurts
is
them too.
miserable for it as
Yeah,
well. Droll
yeah, yeah,
and the Mulch Army, this deck unfortunately will have to pass turn,
yeah,
on both case scenarios. But who knows? I mean, it's still new, so we'll have to see.
yeah.
Um, Primordials again. I mean, we got to put in.
Not
Who
enough,
knows?
not enough cards, in my
Yeah,
opinion. I would put it and go home.
yeah, I agree. It definitely doesn't have enough cards.
They literally have one main deck monster, so
Yeah,
that's
there's
just
not
it.
much to be said about that for sure. Kashtira, pure Kashtira.
It's always been a roguish deck,
Yeah,
almost like a
it's
10-tier roguish deck. Shifter
yeah,
is a crazy card. They
yeah,
try to summon under 4 so they don't get nibbed. And drool doesn't really hurt them. And if you do drool, and if they have someone feel like unicorn, well, they're gonna look at your extra deck. So it's kind of it's somewhat balanced. It's quite roguish.
yeah. Again, another deck that likes D Shifter though.
Yeah, D
And the
shifter,
new
they love it.
the old Mulch Army can hurt it. Obviously, it's special
The
from
new
hand.
one they do with Theosis, and then they can overlay for Shang. So that's like 2 summons. I mean 2 draws.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not
Yep.
terrible. I think it has its place. I think it will do okay,
Probably playing with another engine as well. I don't know what, but it's probably some rank
and it's
7.
cheap.
Type.
It's not
Yeah,
expensive.
yeah, yeah.
Outside of
That's
Fenrir,
pretty.
it's not expensive, and that's not even expensive anymore.
Yeah, that's like
Uh,
15 bucks. Yeah.
Flu. I think our time. I think Flu's
Oh
time is
man,
done. Thank God.
people are
Um,
gonna still try to play it though.
of
Trust.
course, but I mean, when was the last time you saw Flu? Right. Let's be
It's
honest.
actually been a while. It's actually been a
Right.
while.
And it's a dirt cheap deck, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Rich.
under 50 bucks, I think, right, for everything.
Yeah.
Maybe even less than that.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, the old Mulch Army
Omar Charmy
decimates it.
kills his card deck.
Yeah,
Oh my god! Like you
yeah.
put the can't even think. I just call him the blue one. The blue one kills him.
Oh, for sure. Plus D shifter in main. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
only benefit to it. But
Yeah.
like outside
They
of
do lose a
that,
draw if they do not draw the shifter, almost like like ritual beast, but
for
they
sure.
usually always draw the shifter, and it can like loop shifter, which is crazy.
Flu, we're not gonna see much of anymore. Fiendsmith Metalmorph. This obviously definitely has to go testing. This deck can do
Yeah.
some pretty cool things. I mean, the Metalmorph. I did some research on it because I have all the cards. Like, it can do some pretty cool things with the Metal Illusionist and being able to bring out the negate. Plus, the trap cards are kind of crazy, making it unaffected by, like, can't be targeted, can't be destroyed by battle. So it'll make some pretty big beat sticks. On top of the Fiendsmith engine, it'll give you, you'll have 2 summon negates, plus you'll have a Omni negate, plus you'll be able to pop 2 cards. Like, it will have forms of interruption. Um, but I don't, again, I have no idea. I don't, it's obviously going to be, someone will play test it. We'll find out. Um, Dragon Link, I mean, we're almost going to be to the point where we let this deck die, right? Like, people are still making some crazy decks.
They're still trying with the dragons,
Yeah,
yeah.
man, Red Rocks Dragon or Red Rose Dragon. They have some pretty crazy combo lines. It main decks Bestials, which is obviously, with the Ubel deck is a big deal. Um, but really, outside of that, I know for a fact this loses to the New Mulch Army
Yeah.
100%. They use
Oh
that
yeah,
extra
yeah,
deck about 10 times.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm sure someone will cook something up, though, for sure. New Shark deck. I don't even think we put this in testing. I really think this is going to be like a high end rogue deck, if not
It
low tier
it
1.
has a decent amount of potential. Yeah.
It does. I would say probably safely in the high road right now, but this deck does a lot. If they get to build their full board with no interruption, like this deck
And
is
see,
kind of nuts.
every single new water XZ deck can make Bahamut, which makes Toad. So
Right,
like that's usually like, and then you go on from there. So
and you protect yourself from Nib. I'm sure they do it
yeah.
before 5 summons. So you're protected from Nib, but again, the new Maul Charmy card will definitely pose an issue. But they
Hmm.
can probably at least end on Toad with only giving you 2 draws. So at least they'll have something. Um, and then they can always full armored XZ on your opponent's turn, and
Yeah, Form X, Evil
yeah,
Lancer. They got a decent amount. Yeah.
yeah. Six Sams. Oh, so many people
Well,
love this deck,
yeah.
man. We gotta hurt people's
This
feelings.
is a fan favorite deck. We've already talked about how it loses to Drool for sure. It loses. It does not lose to Nib if you do it right. Like I don't know specifically, like because the new guy can negate a monster effect, so he can stop the Nib. But everything, like it loses to the new Charmy. Like Synchro decks, they just lose to the Charmy. They just lose to it. They spam synchros at least minimum 5.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be a testing thing though. I mean, it's got some new cards, a good amount of them, but their best spell cards still limited to one.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, the new synchro cards plus the new main deck effect monsters. I guess we'll see what Team Sam can cook up. I'm guessing that's gonna be his deck. Um, Plant Link, if you're European,
yeah.
best deck.
I don't know how they keep doing it. It's just I know it's a good deck, but it's just like every time. How
If
does it
you're
every time they
European,
keep?
best deck.
It's
Um,
just
I would say
ridiculous.
it's still a safe tier one deck. I would say it's probably a lower end because the going first, the deck is crazy. Um, but again, it's gonna struggle with a lot of the decks do. The new Mulch Army, because it uses the extra deck like 8 times on their
Yeah,
first
they
turn.
summoned Jasmine like twice, so
Yep.
like yeah, like there
So,
gonna be
but
some
even
problems there.
so, with all those cards, this board has like 8, 9 interruptions fully built.
Yeah,
So like you better draw a good amount of you better draw the right cards. Like
yeah,
because this deck may still be able to play through it.
yeah,
But the problem is they do end on like 9 cards on their field. So your opponent can start with 15 cards
yeah.
because you have your back row plus all your monster fields are full. So they're gonna have like 15 cards. But again, I mean, we'll have to wait for the next European YCS and then we'll see what people do with it. Um, Telements, I mean, I think we just let this deck die, man.
And then we can say what lights for too, if you really want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a pile deck. I mean, grass
It's
is
a
greener.
all
Got
yeah,
gave it
send out
a
deck.
nice little boost. I would say it's better than Flu, better than Dragon Link, better than Salad, better than Vanquish, better than Gimmick, better. Probably in this area with Pearly and White Force and Tyrion, like you get the right
Somewhat,
tier
yeah.
pilot though with a good amount of RNG, like a lot of. I mean, let's be
Man,
honest.
that's give them all the RNG. You gotta
Yeah,
give it
I
all
mean
to
they make
them.
Protos now.
Oh, really?
You can
What the
make
hell?
Protos. So you can make Protos. You could make Colossus Protos, but it definitely makes Protos. So
What?
that's a big deal. I would say
Yeah.
middle rogue. Um, Mermail again. I think this deck's going to be absolutely crazy, but until I think we see it in action,
Yeah, like I said, like the water XZ decks, if you could, like they summon Bahamut, which goes into the Toad, so like they have a guaranteed way to stop Nib, but I don't know about Droll for these other decks. So
yeah, I don't think it doesn't like it. I mean, I think in theory where I think it's gonna go
it,
is I think it's gonna be a tier
it,
one deck, but I
it seems
think
like
for
if a deck
now,
doesn't lose to Droll, it loses to a more Charmy, and if it doesn't lose to a more Charmy, it loses to like some weird like shifter.
Shifter, Nib,
Yeah,
but this makes Toad, so
it's
you'll be
hard to
able to.
combat all these great hand traps.
Oh, for
So
sure. I mean, it makes double Toad, um,
yeah,
so which is kind
and
of
they
crazy.
their hand too. So like they're kind of a crazy deck.
I think we leave it in testing, see what happens. Fiendsmith Goblin Bikers.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Nothing crazy.
Probably a middle rogue around the Unchained area. Can do some cool
Yeah,
things. Still an XZ deck though, which is kind of the problem.
yeah.
It doesn't like D
They summon
shifter.
a lot from the extra deck. Like
Yeah, and from
they don't
hand,
lose the shifter, they
right?
lose to roll. From
Someone
hand, yeah,
if you play
yes,
like
they
the
do
Link
summon from
Three
hand.
Turbo,
They do summon from hand. Yep, they summon from hand.
so
Speedroid. Yep.
you're gonna struggle with Mulch Armies.
Hmm.
Would you play Crossout if you have room? I guess.
You have room actually, but
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if you do all that, but like you can if you want.
obviously now we're gonna get into the big dogs here. Let's just go ahead and do Snake Eye Cash. Fiendsmith.
Okay, Cash Fiend Smith. Okay.
I think we still gotta put some respect on it. Probably one of the stronger rogue decks, if not the strongest rogue deck.
Hmm.
Um, That's just a lot of engines to pile into a deck. um, but I mean, the end board, right? I mean, you end on a Fenrir, you end on a Unicorn, you end on the Fiendsmith and the Snake Eyes engine. It's a lot to
Hmm.
play through a lot. Malcharmy are gonna be rough though.
Yeah,
Um,
roll in it too.
Now the fun ones: Fire King, Azamina, Snake Eyes.
Man, that's got to be like a top tier one, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna say you're probably up in this area here.
Yeah,
You mix that engine, you get the Omni Negate, you get the Snake Eyes engine, plus the Fire King cards that all work together. You get the Kieran non-target pops, you get the Garunix, the Send, you get the Promethean, the Trigger, you get the Omni
that's a lot
Negate.
going on. Yeah,
I mean, the end board's crazy. Can play
not a
through a
lot of.
lot.
It definitely can do a lot of disruption.
Again, I think this deck will probably be one of the top tier, and then we get the top deck of the meta, right? I mean, we can all probably agree. Fiendsmith,
Yeah,
Azamina, Snake Eye is going to be the best deck.
yeah.
Um, Plays through an outrageous amount that builds a crazy end board. I mean, you end on 7, 8 interruptions, guaranteed Desiree, Caesar, Flamberge, SP, Banish, IP. I mean, just and on top of that, still probably 3 or 4 hand traps in your hand, non-engine. Um, Again, the biggest issue with this deck was it lost to Nib. Now it doesn't. So, yeah, I would say
Yeah,
that
yeah.
these three are probably
It's
gonna be the big
basically
dogs.
back to where it was before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. Until
Yeah.
until the next release of the Rizio cards, I would say. But right now, I'd say this is pretty much what we got. It's gonna be an interesting meta with the new Malcharmy cards, with the new support that came out, and then we'll have to see what happens. Anything left to say?
What else left to say? It seems like we're back with Snake Eye being top deck again. Tempai's there, even though with one field spell, which is crazy. And Fiendsmith, Ubel is just stupid.
Yeah. So,
But
all right.
we're gonna expand this to see whatever changes we get.
Well, we got like 3 months, so give or take, unless we get an emergency ban list. So, this is what we got. Appreciate you guys watching, and see you next time.